Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Azri bin Azlan and I am the first presenter for our group assignment 1, which is titled Malaysia Expenditure and Budget. So for our contents in this presentation, first we're going to describe about the concept of government expenditure and budget. Next, we moving into the government budget and expenditure in Malaysia, which cover the key concept or key theme in comparison of period 2020, 2021 and 2022. So next we moving into type of government expenditure, and then contemporary issues which related to tourism sector, and what are the government initiative in overcoming these issues, and what are the challenges faced by tourism sector in the future. Moving on into government budget and expenditure, specifically in Malaysia. Okay, so what is government expenditure and budget? First, government expenditure refers to the purchase of goods and services, which include public consumption and public investment, and transfer payment consisting of income transfer, which is pension and social benefits, and capital transfer. So, to put it simple, government expenditure refers to what government contribute in terms of consumption or purchases in the economy. So if the government expenditure contribute higher percentage to the GDP, it will indicate that the economy is more controlled or more centralized by the government, and vice versa. So government budget consists of the government expenditure plan in a specific period. To put it simple, for example, we can see budget 2020 in Malaysia, Belanjawan 2020. So Belanjawan 2020 indicates what are the government expenditure plan in 2020. So for government budget for 2020, Belanjawan 2020, the government will be contribute a total of 297,020 million to the economy and the country. So there are three key focus, which is first, growth oriented, which mean that targeting multinational, electrical and electronics, transportation, telecommunication, Islamic finance, green energy and palm oil. So from this we can see that the government focus is a whole, or it is not specifically in one sector. Okay, so from this we can see that we can create more job opportunities, increasing minimum wages, education, housing, cost of living and also social welfare. And lastly, the government also focus on digitalization and adoption of new technology to specifically by the SMEs, digital content, manufacturing, services and financial services. So at the bottom, I put some of the big allocation from the government, Belanjawan 2020 to some sectors, which is for example 21.6 billion for national fiberization and connectivity plan via public-private partnership, which means that the government going to be focused on developing or increasing the stability of internet connection throughout the country, and therefore this will increase financial inclusion in Malaysia. Next, estimated cost of 8.3 billion to improve transportation infrastructure to Port Klang. So this allocation indicates that the government also focus on transportation infrastructure in Malaysia. Not to forget that the government also allocate 5 billion to for bantuan sehari hidup. For example, in this slide, we can see that singles who are 40 years old and above going to get 2,000 a month, and also disabled individual aged 18 and above will also be benefited from this aid. In 2021, government allocated about 322,540 million to the country. This is because of COVID-19 hits, which it affect the increment in the budget in compared to 2020. So in budget 2021, the government introduced to raise ceiling of COVID-19 fund to 65 billion because of in 2020 the government provides about 45 billion to COVID-19 funds to help the health sector in terms of providing PPE, sanitizers and also rapid test kits. Not only that, the government also introduced Prihatin SME Plus, Penjana and Kita Prihatin stimulus package, which purpose to help the people who have been affected via the MCO. Some of the people have been their salary reduced by the company. So this stimulus package purpose to aiding these people. And as we can see at the bottom, the 4 stimulus package have been introduced in 2020. So in the budget 2021, the government aims to continue this stimulus package, which is to help the people. So we can see that in compared to 2020, the government budget is more specific, or it is aims in helping the in micro level, which the direct transfer is being implemented in 2021 more than in 2020 because of the hit of COVID-19. The government need to help the people directly so that the people can spend their basic needs and also the SMEs can survive. So in budget 2022, the government focus on a recovery phase, which is a total of 332,100 million is going to be allocated for 2022, which there are 3 key focus. First, direct assistance, access to public health, quality education. Second, business financing, investment in key sectors. And third, recovery for targeted sectors. And lastly, prosperous and sustainable economy. So from these key themes, we can see that the government have not focused on one sector. They have been more open because of the economy is going into the phase of recovery. So the government have been introduced some of the packages, and also the government have been invest in some of the targeted sectors. For example, tourism, 1.2 billion ringgit have been allocated for tourism industry so that they can recover from their losses in the past years. And also we can see that the government still allocates higher allocation, which is 32.4 billion in the Ministry of Health, which is to develop or to increase public facilities and also public aid, public supplies, public health supplies. And we can see that the government consistent in giving aids or direct assistance to the people, which is you can see that Bantuan Keluarga Malaysia 8.2 billion have been allocated to direct assist from the government to the people. So we can see that budget 2022 have not focused more in helping the people directly, but it is going into the phase of helping the economy as a whole. Okay, so one of the key points that I want to share is the comparison of Ministry of Health budget allocation throughout year 2020, 2021 and 2022. So as we can see here, there have been an increased pattern. This is due to first, COVID-19 prevention equipment, which the government tends to provides PPE, sanitizers, ventilators and also beds. Second, the government also aims to increase facilities and accessibility to public health, which is this is one of the lessons that we get from 2020, which after the COVID-19 hits, the hospital cannot maintain or cannot comprehend larger amount of patient come into the hospital, which leads to insufficient of beds, and the positive COVID-19 patient have been laid down on the floor. So that is the problem. And lastly, the vaccination programs. The government promotes vaccination programs to the people, so that the people will be encouraged or be aware in taking the vaccine, so that it will help to attain herd immunity.
Type of government expenditure. In this part, I will explain about the type of government expenditure and its subcategories. Government expenditure basically are divided into two main categories, which is operating and development expenditure. But since 2021, government introduced new expenditure in the budget, which is COVID-19 funds, and continued to 2022. As we can see, there are several sectors under the development expenditure, which is economic, social security and general administration sector. Budget allocation based on type of government expenditure. From the table shown, we can see that every year government allocate the budget on operating expenditure the most, which is in 2020 we can see the budget allocate is 241 billion. For the 2021, 236.5 million, and for 2022 the budget allocate is 233.5 billion. The budget allocate on operating expenditure is actually higher than the previous year's revised allocation. Later, we are going to break this down according to the type of expenditure. Percentage allocation of government operating and development expenditure by component in 2020, 2021, and 2022. In this table is about the allocation of government operating expenditure by component. Within the budget year 2020, 2021, and 2022, emolument remained the top percentage allocation under the operating expenditure at 37.8%, 26.2%, and 26% respectively. This is show the highest under the operating expenditure. The highest budget for the emolument mainly due to the government need to pay salaries and wage allowance and various other remuneration to civil servants of the federal government. Grants and transfer to state government shows the lowest percentage allocation among the others component at 2.4% for both year 2021 and 2022. And still show these 3 years show the lowest percentage among the others component. For the next table is about the allocation of government development expenditure by sector. Within the budget year given, economic sector remained the top percentage allocation under the development expenditure at 10.4% and 12.1%. This is for 10.4% and 12.1% for the 2021 and 2022, and remain the highest percentage among the others sector. A larger allocation on economic sector is in line with the government efforts to drive and enhance the growth of the economy, where the economic sector is being hit during the pandemic COVID-19, where most of the economic sectors cannot do well due to the MCO. The percentage of allocation for the social sector shows an increase from 2020 to 2022 due to the significant increase in allocation for education and training. The social sector remained the second highest under the development expenditure. Federal government operating and development expenditure by component and sector. In this part, under the operating expenditure, I want to highlight about the subsidies and social assistance, where there was a remarkable decline in this component, around 18% in 2021, and it increased back to 17 million in 2022. The decline of the amount allocation in 2021 is mainly due to the consolidation of cash assistance program under DPSH and BPN. Yes, the amount of supplies and service in this part also declined in 2021 and shows a significant increase by 30.5% in 2022. For the development expenditure by sector, under the social, we can see that education and training shows an increment over the 3 years and was the highest amount under the social sector in this part. The increment of the budget due to the government provided better education facilities for the rakyat, mainly through the development and upgrading of schools and higher learning institution sectors for year by year. Next, the health subsector also remains as a priority subsector with an increase in expenditure from 2021, 2020, 2021 and 2022. The focus spending is to expand the health sector and provide an effective national healthcare system. More new hospitals and clinics will be built, especially in small districts, to ensure an affordable, equitable and accessible healthcare system. Government spending on the healthcare sector. In Malaysia, some 31.9 billion ringgit was allocated for the healthcare sector in 2021, compared with 30.6 billion ringgit in 2020. As the COVID-19 pandemic is expected to persist for a number of years, an additional 1 billion ringgit has been allocated to stem the ongoing third wave of infections going into 2021, including 475 million ringgit for the purchase of reagents, test kits and consumables for the Health Ministry. For the United States, the budget proposed $94.5 trillion in discretionary budget authority 2021 and $1.3 trillion in monetary funding for HHS. The missions of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services HHS is to enhance and protect the health and well-being of all Americans by providing for effective health and human service. I choose to compare the US with the Malaysia. As we know, US is the big city and development country, so they will spend big amount of money for people's health compared to the Malaysia. Even Malaysia give the most priority on health, but there were huge gap between the United States budget for the healthcare and Malaysia.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Adi Hakim Miroslan, metric number 1919135. So for my part, I'm going to be talking about the contemporary issue regarding tourism sector. So just for additional information, tourism in Malaysia are the third largest contributor to the economy and also one of the largest employer in Malaysia, providing 9.5% of the total workforce, which has been greatly affected by the COVID-19. So next we have the Malaysia tourist arrival bar graph. So as you can see, 2014 is the highest, the highest bar in the graph, having 27.44 million arrival of tourists. So from 2014, we have a decrease in 2015, an increase in 2016, decrease in 2017, and also decrease in 2018, an increase in 2019, and a significantly decrease in 2020. So as we all know, this is all because of COVID-19. So so like 2014, we have 27.44%. I mean, sorry, 20. So as you can see on the bar graph, 2019, which has a more higher bar graph compared to 2020. On 2019, we have the number of tourist arrival 26.1 million, which dropped from that number to 4.33 million. So this is a huge fall by 83.4% from 2019 to 2020. So that's for the tourist arrival. And also for the tourist receipt, it also dropped, plunging by 85.3% from 2019 to 2020. So like 2019, we have 86.1 billion of tourist receipt, and it dropped to 12.7 billion on 2020. Okay, so next we will take a look at the supply chain affected by COVID-19. So we have four. This is one of the example of supply chain affected by COVID-19. So we have the first one is related to tourism business. Second, we have the restaurant and food supply. Third, we have the accommodation and hotels. And last but not least, we have the transportation. So let's start with the first one. We have the related tourism business. So for the first point, the government cleared and shut down all tourist sites. This means that any activity that has to do with tourism will be cleared and shut down and cannot be operated anymore. And because of this, for the second point, museums and event planners are suffering a huge amount of financial loss. This is because their main income is from tourists, may income from either domestic or uh, either domestic or international. So when the government shut down any activities that has to do with tourism, museum and event planners cannot do their job. They cannot uh, do their job, which has greatly affected their profit. So for the second one, we have the restaurant and food supply. So catering and food service must enlarge social distance in eateries, limit their activities to delivery service, and also stop all of their operation. So this is the three things that the restaurant and food supply have felt during the PKP period. So first is must stop all of the operations. This is to stop or restrain COVID-19 from becoming too wide in Malaysia. So that is the first step of that the government take. The second one, they can continue their operations, but only or limit to delivery service only. So like they have to like Food Panda or Grab Food, or maybe they are using their own vehicle to deliver their food. So next, last, we they must this is after like the PKP turn from PKP to PKPB, like the second phase or the third phase, if I'm not mistaken. So like restaurant and food supply can open their restaurant shop, but they must enlarge social distance in eateries. So it's like 1 meter, or like 1 meter per person, or 2 person per table only. So for the third one, we have the accommodation and hotels. First point, reservation funds are cancelled. This means this. I'm sorry. This is all because any tourism activities or any activity that has to do with tourism must be stopped or closed or shut down. So, like for example, like me want to do some reserve on hotels, and it is cancelled. Second, all hotels are cleared by who according to government advice. So like if I'm staying at hotels, and the hotel must be cleared. This is to allow the hotel to be used as a quarantine place or anything that has to do with COVID to help restrain the COVID. So for the third, 70 to 80% of hotel bookings are cancelled. So this also has to do with the first point, also the second point. So last but not least, we have the transportation. So the government has banned flights from coming in and out of the country. This is to restrain the COVID-19 outside of Malaysia coming into Malaysia. So like the vehicle such as motorcycle, cars are still able to be used, but only on like work purpose or something important only. If they like want to go to hang out to some place or like go to a mall or as such, then they will be fined by the authority. So next we have the effects of COVID-19 to Malaysian tourism affiliates. So for the first one, we have the tourism demand. Tourism demand is the total number of person who wish to travel, to use the tourist facilities, or the number of person who travel. So the first one, the effects, they must postpone the travel plan. This is because during PKP, transportation using flights are not allowed. This is to restrain COVID-19 from coming to white in Malaysia. So for the second one, we have the fear of running out of supplies. So because tourists come to Malaysia to holiday, so like because of the PKP, they don't have enough supplies such as money and even necessities, basic necessities such as clothes, food, beverage and such. So this has greatly affected them. So for the third one, we have the isolation and quarantine policies. So all the tourists, either workers or not workers, must be isolated and then quarantined, which abide with the quarantine policies that has been made by the by the government. So last but not least, we have the tour operators have to halt or cut back their services and operation. So this is also has to do with the government shut down all tourism activities and operation. So that's it for the tourism demand. So last, we have the authority and regulatory. So for the authority and regulatory, so for the first point, we have ensuring the safety of both tourists and workers working in tourism industries as the priorities. So this is for the authority. So like all the tourists, either workers or not workers, so the authority must put their life as the priorities. This is because this is to take care of their sustainability or survivability in our country, which has been affected by the COVID-19. So for the second one, we have the individuals arriving from a country critically hit by the COVID-19 as designated by WHO must present a recent PCR test result. So this means, for example, like United States of America, China, or any country that has been critically hit by the COVID-19 must present a recent PCR test result in order to enter our country. So and last but not least, airport screening programs include clinical assessment, a rapid diagnostic test, and a screening based on body temperature. So a screening based on body temperature. So like so like just ourselves, we enter the shop and then we have to scan our head. Not sure if hands are accepted, but basically we have to scan our forehead to check for our body temperature. So like others like clinical assessment, rapid diagnostic test, and so like maybe like PCR and such. So that's all for me. Thank you.
To cope the issue of pandemic COVID-19 that badly affecting the tourism and business sectors in yearly 2020, the government has come up with several initiatives and strategies specifically to help the people, business and company. So the government allocating 1.6 billion in budget 2022 on tourism industry, showing an increase of 6.5% compared to year 2021, amounted 1.14 billion. Tourism sector was the sector severely affected by the COVID-19 pandemic that hit Malaysia and seemed to be recovered in year 2022. This increase in the total expenditure allocated in year 2022 is to revive the economy. Therefore, several strategies are planned by the government to revive the tourism sector since 2021. The first package that government do is Pemekasa package, basically worth 20 billion, as aiming to control the COVID-19 pandemic, steering the economy recovery and ensuring inclusivity. So the first key highlight here is Human Resource Development Fund levy exemption, that generally is the fee collected from employers and manufacturer for training skill that take 1% of local employees' monthly wages. Second point here is a special electricity bill discount of 10% for hotel, theme park, shopping mall and tour guide agency that can reduce their monthly cost since this sector cannot operate during MCO. And then the third one is one-off assistance of 1,000 have been given to micro enterprises and SME have given under the Geran Khas Prihatin to ease their burden faced by the small business and particularly to managing their cash flow. So there are also many components on this package that I not mention here, such as extension of wage subsidy program, tourism tax and bantuan prihatin rakyat. This is the initiative that has been introduced by the government during the announcement of budget 2022 to recover back the tourism and also business sector. So the first point that I highlight here is Penjana Tourism Financing and BPMB Rehabilitation Scheme. So the government allocating 600 million to help tourism sector to support SME in tourism, which is eligible micro enterprises and SME may apply for financing up to 75,000 and 300,000 respectively, with a financing rate of up to 3.5% per annum for a financing tenure of up to 7 years. So the second point here is wage subsidy program, 600 million under the budget 2022 to benefit 26,000 tourism industry and employers. This program is specifically for employers in tourism sector who experience a decrease in revenue at least 30%, to sustain the business, the company, and also to prevent from losing the job and source of income. In this slide, I indicate the government initiative and strategy from other countries, which is Australia and Singapore. So in Australia, the government delivered $1.2 billion package for aviation and tourism business to support major Australian airlines, including 800,000 half-price airfares to domestic destination. So basically, the government give opportunity for airlines in Australia to give discount ticket for domestic travel through the funding. And then it is to encourage Australians people to travel to key regions that greatly impacted by the loss of international tourism, and also to help retain existing employees. For Singapore, they come up with Job Support Scheme, JSS. The government allocating $27.6 billion and wage subsidy for sector that badly affected by COVID-19. 30% support for wages paid from April to June 2021 delivered to aviation, aerospace and tourism sector, and also 10% support for wages paid from July to September 2021. So basically the two package that come up from these two country can be as example for Malaysian government to cope the COVID-19 pandemic.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Ansafir Tini with number metric 1910352. Today I am going to talk about challenges. This is basically the problem faced despite initiative and strategies they undertaken. Firstly is accommodation and hotels. The various funds announced for upkeep and upgrade of tourism infrastructure, as well as specifically for budget hotels, would contribute to the rebuilding of the tourism industry competitiveness. However, the budget provided does have a positive long-term impact towards the recovery efforts of the hotel industry. The government needs to pay more attention to the hotel and tourism industry, which has been affected even before the outbreak of COVID-19 in Malaysia and the end of 2019, and it will take a long time to recover even if the COVID-19 outbreak has been successfully controlled or eliminated. There is also some hotel industry requests, such as the hotel industry has requested for extension of the service tax exemption to give further add value to the spending power of the people at the hotels that was not announced in budget 2022. Even with initiative taken by the government on improving the domestic travels, however, COVID-19 cases are still not slowing down in Malaysia. Nevertheless, with government pushing people to travel around the country, cases might be increases and might cause another lockdown in some places in the future. This might cause a difficulty in traveling for the locals. Lastly is gaining trust of the local and foreign tourists. This is because with COVID-19 hit Malaysia, people are scared to go out for traveling. Thus, gaining the trust on the safety will be hard. Not to mention there are still many tourist places that are still closed, causing disappointment to them.